Shalom and welcome to the Ministry of Yeshua. I'm glad you're here to learn with us. Today we're diving into this week's portion, which is called Terumah. We'll explore its wisdom, its beauty, and we'll see how it speaks to our lives right now. Together we'll look at passages from Exodus 25:1 through 27:19, which will connect us to 1 Kings 5:26 through 6:13, as well as Mark 12:35 through 44. Let's take a look at the Torah portion summary. So God expresses his desire to live in the midst of his people. He tells Moses to raise a contribution of precious metals, fabrics, stones, spices, and lumber for the construction of a dwelling place. He says, "Let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them." The tabernacle is to be an earthly version of God's sanctuary in the heavenly places. He says, "According to all that I'm going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it." He describes each of the furnishings in detail. In the sanctuary's innermost room, behind the veil of woven of multicolored thread, will be the Ark of the Covenant, which doubles as a golden throne and as a chest in which Moses will place the tablets of testimony engraved with the 10 Commandments. 2 golden angels called cherubim flank the cover of the ark. In the outer chamber of the sanctuary will be a 7-branched golden lamp stand, which is called the menorah, which will provide the illumination for the sanctuary. Opposite the menorah will be the table of bread of the presence, on which the 12 loaves will be placed to remain continually before the Lord. The Lord instructs Moses to construct the sanctuary's walls from wooden planks overlaid with gold, set in silver sockets. The roof will be made of covering of wool and linen weave, goat hair, ram skin, and purple skin. The Lord tells Moses to make a large, copper-plated altar on which to burn the sacrifices, the altar of burnt offering. The courtyards of the altar and the sanctuary will be surrounded by tent-like walls of linen embroidery, supported by wooden posts with silver hooks and copper stakes. And let's go a little bit deeper. What is Terumah? The 19th reading from the Torah is named Terumah. In Exodus 25:2, the Lord commanded Moses to tell the sons of Israel to take a contribution for me. The word translated as contribution is Terumah, which is the name of this Torah portion. Terumah is a word with no real English equivalent, actually. In the Torah, Terumah refers to a particular type of offering dedicated to the temple, like a tithe or first fruits offering. In Exodus 25, the contribution is for the building of a holy place. This Torah reading is occupied with the instructions for the building of the tabernacle and its furnishings. And we see it in Exodus 25:2. "Tell the sons of Israel to raise a contribution for me," Terumah. At the end of the previous Torah reading, Moses ascended Mount Sinai and entered the fire and the cloud that rested on top of the Mount Sinai. He ascended into the presence of God. Imagine finding a hill on top of which God was waiting to come into the blessed presence of the Almighty. All you had to do was climb the hill. Think of how eager you would be to hurry up those slopes of the hill. Imagine the spiritual elevation you would enjoy as you climbed ever closer to the King. Metaphorically, such a hill does exist. It is the hill of generosity. The more we give of ourselves and our resources to God's work, the higher we climb and closer we draw toward Him. As we align our priorities and our energies with God, we experience spiritual ascent. In Exodus 25:2, the Lord commanded Moses to tell the sons of Israel to take a contribution, Terumah, for me. Rashi explains that the word Terumah implies separating a portion of one's resources for a higher purpose. The root of the word Terumah is the Hebrew word rum, which means to uplift. Something given as Terumah to the Lord is lifted up. It is raised above the mundane and elevated for a godly purpose. The implication is that one who gives a gift of Terumah to the Lord is himself uplifted. By giving our resource to God, we spiritually elevate ourselves. The one who gives to the work of the Lord is like a person who climbs ever higher into the presence of God. Givers and takers. Tell the sons of Israel to raise a contribution for me. Exodus 25:2. Every word of the Torah is significant. In Exodus 25:2, the Torah literally says that the sons of Israel were to take a contribution for God. This seems like a contradiction. A person making a donation does not take, he gives. The verse would make it more sense if it said, "Tell the sons of Israel to give a contribution for me." Why did God command the Israelites to take a contribution? By contributing to God's work, a person is actually receiving more than he is giving. Though he gives from his own material resources, he receives in return enormous spiritual benefit. Therefore, one who gives to the work of the Lord is actually taking from the blessing of God. This can be compared to the concept of investing. A certain man decided to purchase stock in a promising business startup. His foolish friends criticized him. They asked, "Why are you giving all your money away?" Several years later, the value of the stock had increased greatly. The man sold the stock and received a large return on the investment. So too, when one gives to the kingdom of heaven, his contribution is like an investment that will reap eternal reward for him. Yeshua once told a parable about 3 different types of investors. One invested generously and received a generous return. Another invested modestly and received a modest return. A third did not invest. He received no return and even lost the original capital with which he had been entrusted. The Apostle Paul said, "The person who gives sparingly will receive sparingly, but a person who gives generously will receive generously." The cheerful giver. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall raise my contribution, Exodus 25:2. A true giver is not motivated to give simply because he anticipates reaping a prosperous return on his investment. A generous person gives to the work of the kingdom because his heart desires to give. He loves God and wants to do everything he can to further the work of God on earth. In Exodus 25:2, the Lord asked Moses to collect donations only from those donors who desired to give. The collection was to be a free will contribution, not an imposed tax or even a tithe. Tithes are important, but Terumah is supposed to be given simply from the heart. This can be compared to a husband and a wife who loved their son and wanted to see him succeed in life. Though they depleted their savings to send their son to college, they did not regret the loss at all. Instead, they desired to help their son to get a good start in life, and they rejoiced to be able to do so. In the same way, a person who loves God should be eager to do all that he can to see God's works succeed. When he invests in the kingdom, he does not regret the loss. He sees it as an opportunity to fulfill his hopes. A true giver wants to honor his father by giving back from the resources bestowed upon him. The true giver does not think of his money and his resources as belonging to him. He regards all that he has as belonging to the Lord. Therefore, when he gives to the Lord's work, he feels no regret. This can be compared to a wealthy man who was going on a journey. Before he left, he entrusted his neighbor with a sack of money for safekeeping. On returning from the journey, he asked for the sack of money back. The neighbor felt no ill will about returning the money because he was only the custodian of it for a short while. In the same way, we should regard all that we have as belonging to God. A person who gives to the work of the kingdom should do so willingly and gladly. The Didache says, "You shall not hesitate to give, nor murmur when you give, for you shall know who is the good repayer of the hire." The Apostle Paul says this, "Each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver." 2 Corinthians 9:7. Names for the tabernacle. Let them construct a sanctuary for me. that I may dwell among them. Exodus 25:8. The Lord told Moses to collect the contribution of precious material from the Israelites for use in the construction of a holy place. Though God dwells above the highest heaven in a sanctuary not made with hands, he desired to dwell on earth among his people in a sanctuary made by their hands. This can be understood metaphorically. When we obey God's instructions and apply them to godly living, our physical effort creates a physical expression of God's desire and will. Every mitzvah, good deed, is like a miniature dwelling place we create for God on earth. The majority of the remainder of the book of Exodus is preoccupied with relating the detailed instructions for making the sanctuary. The Torah uses several different terms for the sanctuary. Sanctuary, the literal meaning would be holy place, mikdash in Hebrew. Tabernacle would be a dwelling place, which is called mishkan in Hebrew. And a tent of meeting, which is tent of appointment, is called Ohel Moed in Hebrew. So let's talk about the sanctuary, the mikdash. The word translated in Exodus 25:8 as sanctuary in Hebrew word mikdash, it means holy place. Mikdash is based on a common biblical word kadosh, which is translated into English as holy. The word holy normally means set aside or separate for ritual purposes. Holiness is a state of separation from the ordinary. The tabernacle was to be a place completely set aside for the Lord. Now the tabernacle, Mishkan. God told Israel to build a holy place so that he could dwell among them. The word translated as dwell in Exodus 25:8 is from the Hebrew word shachan. Shachan is a verb that means to lodge or to dwell. Mishkan is a noun form of the same word, means dwelling place. God desired to dwell in the midst of Israel. The tabernacle was to be that dwelling place. The word Mishkan is typically translated as tabernacle in our English Bibles. And the last one, tent of meeting, Ohel Moed. The Torah often calls the tabernacle the tent of meeting, Ohel Moed, like a tent. The tabernacle was a portable structure. Its walls were made out of curtains, and its coverings was of skin. It was God's tent in the wilderness. The word meeting is a translation of the Hebrew word moed, which can also be translated as appointment or appointed time. In Leviticus 23, the Sabbath and the biblical festivals are referred to with the same word. They are God's appointed times. The tabernacle was the appointed place for worship and the appointed place for meeting with God at his appointed times. And I will talk about the family home. Let them construct a sanctuary for me that I may dwell among them. Exodus 25:8. Why did God choose to dwell in the tabernacle? If he had wanted, the Almighty could have sent Israel on their way, leaving them with only the collective memory of the Mount Sinai experience. They would remember the thunder, the lightning, and the terrifying voice on the mountain. Mount Sinai would have left a deep impression of awe and splendor and fear upon the people. But God is more than just awe, splendor, and fear. He is also a God of intimacy, comfort, and immanence. He did not want his people to know him only as the distant, fearful God of Mount Sinai. He desired to dwell with his people. He wanted to go with them. At Mount Sinai, Israel entered into a metaphorical marriage with God. In Exodus 24, a wedding ceremony took place between God and Israel. Immediately after the ceremony was complete, God began to give the instructions for the building of the tabernacle. This can be compared to a man who married a bride. After the wedding, he immediately desired to bring her into his home. Just as a new husband takes his bride home, God desired to have a place of intimacy with his bride, a bridal chamber of sorts of a family home. As noted above, the word tabernacle is translated from the Hebrew word mishkan, a word that means a dwelling place. The tabernacle had all the features of a home: a table for food, lights for illumination, coverings for privacy, and inner and outer chambers. According to Apostle John, God's residence in the tabernacle is similar to the way in which he dwelt in the person of Yeshua. John 1:14 says this, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us." By using the word dwell to describe God's presence through Yeshua, John connected the nature of the Messiah with the dwelling of the Lord in the tabernacle. God is in the details. According to all that I'm going to show you as pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all his furniture, just so you shall construct it. Exodus 25:9. The Torah spares no words in offering detailed descriptions of the tabernacle. God explained the details of making the tabernacle down to every last hook and stitch. Hebrew 8:5 explains that the tabernacle was a copy and a shadow of the heavenly things, and because of this, Moses was careful to record every detail exactly as he had seen it on the mountain. It was if Moses were trying to transcribe one universe into another universe. He wanted to make sure the copy accurately mirrored the original. The Torah descriptions of the tabernacle attempt to paint a picture in words. The tabernacle was a work of art. To an artist, every element has significance. For the purposes of this commentary, we will not attempt to explore the complex details of the tabernacle and its associated symbolism. Instead, we will attempt to acquire a thumbnail overview of the material. The little sanctuary. According to all that I'm going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it. Exodus 25:9. It is difficult to explain the awesome splendor of the tabernacle of the Lord. The tabernacle was unlike anything we have experienced in today's world. It was not simply a big church or synagogue in the wilderness. It was the dwelling place of God on earth. It housed his dwelling presence. Suppose you wanted to visit your cousin. To do so, you would simply go to the house in which he lives. You would expect to find him there. You could enjoy fellowship with your cousin by sharing a meal with him in his house. The tabernacle worked the same way. A person who wanted to visit God could simply go to the tabernacle. It was God's house on earth. He was present in the tabernacle in a way in which he is not present on earth today. In today's world, a person might attend church or synagogue. Churches and synagogues are descendants of the tabernacle. The synagogue is modeled after the tabernacle, in that the prayer service remember the daily sacrifices that took place in the tabernacle. A synagogue has an ark that symbolically corresponds to the Holy of Holies. The community of worshippers assembles in the synagogue at appointed times, just as Israel assembled at the tabernacle at those times. Similarly, churches are descendants of synagogues, and they retain many elements of synagogue services. Today, a person going to church finds himself at a powerfully moving worship service. He might feel spiritually elevated, feel goosebumps on his flesh, experience strong emotions, or even see signs and miracles as evidence of the presence of God's Spirit. During such an experience, a person would say, "The presence of the Lord is here." Similarly, a person might go to the solemn Day of Atonement service at the synagogue and hear heart-rending prayers of such spiritual intensity that he feels swept into the very presence of God. But neither of these experiences can be compared with the tabernacle. Though the presence of God's Spirit can be felt today, and His Spirit is always with us, the tabernacle was different. God was present in the tabernacle in a far more concrete and absolute way. It was not a matter of feeling of spiritual intensity, it was a matter of fact. God lived in that tent. The tabernacle was like having heaven on earth. It was like having God as a next-door neighbor. However, a tent is only a temporary dwelling place. In the days of the King Solomon, the tabernacle was recreated as a solid structure in the city of Jerusalem. The tabernacle became the temple. But even the stone temple was temporary. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians. It was rebuilt, but then destroyed by the Romans centuries later, in the days of the apostles. Ever since then, there has been no temple on earth. The prophet Ezekiel lived in the days of the Babylonian destruction of the temple. He saw God's people scattered among the nations. He also saw a future time when the temple in Jerusalem would be rebuilt and God's dwelling presence would return to it. Until then, he prophesied that God would dwell among his people as a little sanctuary in their midst. Thus says the Lord God, although I have cast them far off among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. Ezekiel 11:16. In Judaism, the phrase little sanctuary of Ezekiel 11:16 is understood to refer to synagogues and Jewish homes. The rituals and prayer services of the synagogues are closely related to the tabernacle services. The imagery of a home and the Sabbath table is drawn from the tabernacle rituals. Every place where God's people gather to worship Him, whether at home, around the table, at synagogue, or the church, God is present as a little sanctuary. We are able to have a small taste of His presence. Abba's chair, the Ark of the Covenant. They shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Exodus 25:10. The Ark of the Covenant consisted of a chest overlaid with gold inside and out. The chest had a lid on which 2 cherubim angels were wrought in gold. The lid referred to as the mercy seat, but the Hebrew word for it would probably better be translated as covering. The ark had rings on its sides through which poles were inserted so it could be carried without being touched. Touching the ark was hazardous. In the popular Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Holy Ark was depicted as a weapon of war. Though Israel sometimes carried the ark before them when they went into battle, it was never a weapon. What was the real function of the ark? The ark seems to be a unique innovation to compensate for the absence of an idol. In the other temples and shrines of the ancient Near East, the central focal point was always the idol of the god being worshipped. However, how do you depict the invincible God? Since the Lord forbade Israel from depicting him with an idol or any type of image, a substitute focal point was necessary in the sanctuary. The Ark of the Covenant was not an object of worship like an idol, but it was to be regarded as the throne of God. The Holy of Holies, where it was kept, was like his throne room. The 2 cherubim that flanked either side of the lid of the ark represented the angels that surround God's throne in the heavens. In a very real sense, God occupied the throne of the ark. In Leviticus 16:2, the Lord warned Aaron not to enter the Holy of Holies because he appears in a cloud over the mercy seat. Therefore, the ark should be considered the throne of God within the tabernacle. As such, it provides a focal point of worship, but the object itself is not worshipped. Instead, the one who sits upon it is to be worshipped. In an Orthodox Jewish home, it is not unusual for an Abba, father, to have a special chair at the table. The Abba's chair is treated with a certain amount of respect. Other family members do not sit in Abba's chair, even when he is absent. It is a way of honoring the father. Similarly, the Ark of the Covenant can be thought of Abba's chair. Heart of the disciple. You shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and out. You shall surely overlay it, and you shall make a gold molding around it. Exodus 25:11. The Ark of the Covenant was at the heart of the tabernacle. As such, it corresponds to the heart of man. Just as the ark was God's throne in the tabernacle, we need to make our hearts a suitable throne for Him in our lives. In Hebrew thought, the heart is not regarded as the seat of the emotions. Instead, it represents the person's thoughts, intellect, and will. The Hebrew Bible uses the word heart the way we use the word mind in English. The ark was a wooden chest constructed of resinous acacia wood. The wood was overlaid with pure gold inside and outside. We can understand why the chest was coated with gold on the outside, where it could be seen. But why waste precious gold by overlaying the inside of the chest? No one could see the inside of the ark. The gold on the inside teaches us an important lesson about integrity. To be a suitable vessel for God's service, it is not sufficient for a person to merely look godly on the outside. Though the exterior appearance is important, the interior is equally important. The word hypocrite comes from the Greek word for actor. A hypocrite is someone who uses pity to put on a show. Yeshua criticized many of the sages of his day and their disciples for hypocrisy. And he said this, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, but the inside they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and of the dish, so that the outside of it may become clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but on the inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you too outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." Matthew 23:25 through 28. One who looks righteous on the outside, but is privately godless, is a hypocrite. A person who dresses piously and pretends to be holy while harboring wicked and impure things in his heart is a hypocrite. The Ark of the Covenant was overlaid with pure gold on the outside and the inside to teach us that it is not sufficient to be righteous only in the eyes of men. God sees not as man sees, for a man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. Torah in our hearts. You shall put into the ark the testimony which I shall give you. Exodus 25:16. It is easy to look good on the outside, but how do we make our hearts pure and keep them pure? Is it even possible? The Torah uses the word heart the way we use the word mind. The Torah says every intent of the thoughts of man's heart was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. And the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. Genesis 8:21. The prophet Jeremiah says the heart is more deceitful than all else and is desperately sick. Who can understand it? Jeremiah 17:9. If this is the state of human mind, how can we ever hope to change? How can we have pure hearts? God promises that He will change our hearts from within. This is the promise of His new covenant. In Jeremiah 31:33, He said He would make a new covenant with His people Israel. And as a part of the new covenant, He would change their hearts by writing His Torah on them. And it says this, "But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares the Lord, I will put my Torah within them and on their heart, and I will write it, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people." Jeremiah 31:33. The concept of placing the Torah in our hearts is illustrated by the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was made to house the two tablets of the covenant. So too the Torah is to be placed in our hearts. The prophet Ezekiel promises that in the Messianic redemption, God will give us new hearts. "Moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh." Ezekiel 36:26. When we commit ourselves to be followers of Yeshua and recipients of His cleansing, the Spirit of God begins the process of recreating our hearts. We should pray toward this end with the words of King David, who said, "Create in me a clean heart, O God," Psalm 51:10. Then we may declare along with him, "I delight to do your will, O my God. Your Torah is within my heart," Psalm 48. In the comments on Exodus 19, we noted that the Torah can be likened to a marriage contract, ketubah. In Jewish tradition, the ketubah is placed somewhere within the family home as a continual reminder of the marriage obligations. In the days of Moses, the tabernacle stood in the center of the encampment of the tribes of Israel. The focal point of the tabernacle was an inner chamber called the Holy of Holies, in which stood the Ark of the Covenant. The 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments were inside the Ark. In that regard, the Torah, God's ketubah, with Israel was at the center of the home. In synagogues today, the Torah scroll is kept inside a chest called an ark. However, a synagogue ark should not be confused with the Ark of the Covenant. The synagogue ark is not meant to replace the tabernacle's ark, nor is it to be revered as such. There is only one Ark of the Covenant, and it has been lost since the days of Jeremiah the prophet. The Holy Table. You shall make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Exodus 25:23. A house has a table. God told the children of Israel to make a golden table on which the priests were to place 12 loaves of bread. The bread is called the lechem hapanim, which means bread of the presence. Some English versions translate it as showbread. Like the ark, the table was to be made of acacia wood overlaid with gold. Like the ark, it was to have rings through which poles could be inserted for carrying it. A table needs dishes. The table in tabernacle was to have dishes, racks, jars, and bowls, all made of pure gold. The jars and bowls were for oil and drink offerings. The racks were for stacking the loaves of bread, 6 on one side of the table and 6 on the other. Now let's talk deeper about the bread of the presence. You shall set the bread of the presence on the table before me at all times. Exodus 25:30. The laws for the bread of the presence are explained in Leviticus 24:5-9. The bread was to be left continually in the presence of the Lord, hence the name bread of presence. It was baked on Friday into 12 unleavened loaves and set out on the table on Sabbath, where it remained all week long. On the following Sabbath it was eaten by the priests and replaced with fresh loaves. The Torah says that the bread represents an everlasting covenant for the sons of Israel, Leviticus 24:8. The 12 loaves symbolize the 12 tribes. In the little sanctuaries of the Jewish homes, the family remembers the tabernacle bread of the presence on Friday nights when breaking the Sabbath challah bread and sharing it with everyone gathered around the table. For disciples of Yeshua, the bread of the presence is a reminder of Yeshua, who declared himself to be the bread of life, John 6:48. The table of the bread of presence shows us that God places an emphasis on table fellowship. Breaking bread together, for example, eating together, was one of the 4 principal devotions of the early disciples of Yeshua. Table fellowship is very important. In today's hurried world, it is becoming increasingly uncommon for families to sit together at the table for mealtimes. Many parents have told me that the simple ritual of everyone sitting down together at the table for a meal on Friday nights has revolutionized their homes. One family told me that prior to eating Sabbath dinners together on Friday nights, they never had a formal meal together. Instead, someone was always coming or going. They always had an event to hurry off to or were late coming home from. The activities and entertainments of daily life kept them from enjoying the simple fellowship of eating together. The calming power of the Sabbath removed all of that clutter and allowed them to have a designated time for family without distractions. The tabernacle imagery should encourage us to prioritize the family table and the simple joys of table fellowship. Menorah of Israel. Then you shall make a lampstand of pure gold, the lampstand and its base, and its shaft are to be made of hammered work. Its cups, its bulbs, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. Exodus 25:31. A house needs a lamp. The Lord commanded the Israelites to construct a solid gold lampstand holding 7 oil lamps. The Hebrew word for the lampstand is menorah. The menorah was to have 3 branches on each side of a central lampstand. The branches were to be shaped like almond blossoms, bulbs, and flowers. The lamps of the menorah needed to be tended every day. The priests were charged with cleaning the lamps, replacing and keeping the wicks trimmed, and refilling the oil at the times of sacrifice. The menorah provided continual illumination in the tabernacle. For disciples of Yeshua, the menorah reminds us of Yeshua, who said, "I am the light of the world," John 9:5. The menorah has become a universal symbol of Judaism and the people of Israel. Archaeology has revealed that at least in the Second Temple era, it was common motif on Jewish coin and artwork. Yet for all its popularity, the 7-branched menorah is never employed in synagogues or in Jewish homes as an actual lampstand. It is depicted in various artistic representations, and it is not uncommon to find a 9-branched menorah lit at Hanukkah. But 7-branched lampstand or candelabras are never burned because that design is considered to be only for the tabernacle. In the little sanctuaries of Jewish homes, observant Jews remember the kingdom of the menorah and tabernacle when lighting the Sabbath candles before Shabbat begins on Friday nights. In the synagogue, the light that hangs over the Torah ark symbolizes the menorah. The tabernacle. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twisted linen, and blue and purple and scarlet material. You shall make them with cherubim, the work of skillful workmen. Exodus 26:1. In ancient Israel, a house consisted of sheltered structure ordinarily surrounded by a courtyard. The house was divided into separate rooms. The tabernacle follows the same general pattern. The tabernacle was a solid central structure composed of wooden boards overlaid with gold. The boards were set up in sockets, clasped together, and hung with 10 colorful tapestries hooked in their seams. The curtains of the tabernacle were made of a combination of wool and linen thread, twisted together in colors of white, blue, purple, and scarlet. Cherubim were embroidered into the curtains. A complex series of gold and silver rings, clasps, hoops, and hooks knit the whole together. The structure was covered with tent-like tarp made of goat hair, waterproofed with animal hides. On the inside, the structure was divided into 2 rooms. The large, open holy place contained the menorah, the table of the bread of the presence, and the golden altar of the incense. It was separate from the inner chamber by a veil, on which a depiction of 2 cherubim was embroidered. Behind the veil was a smaller inner chamber called the most holy place, or Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant. Outside of the tabernacle stood the laver, a basin of water from which the priests washed their hands and feet, and the altar of burnt offering. This outer courtyard was enclosed by a wall of posts and curtains. In the days of the tabernacle, Israelites were allowed to enter the outer courtyards, but only the priests could enter the tabernacle proper. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement. The tabernacle must have been breathtakingly beautiful. The tabernacle symbolized the Garden of Eden. It was oriented to be open toward the east. Worshippers entering would have been walking toward the west. The opening of the east side of the tabernacle is reminiscent of the way into the Garden of Eden. In Genesis 3:24, God positions 2 cherubim angels, each with a flaming sword, on the east side of the garden to bar men from entering. The tabernacle also has an east entrance, and the cherubims are woven into its curtains. The Garden of Eden was the place of life where men could enjoy the presence of God. and the tabernacle was to serve the same function. It was a small, portable paradise. The bronze altar of burnt offering. You shall make the altar of acacia wood 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. Exodus 27:1. Outside the tabernacle stood the bronze altar on which the priesthood was to apply the blood of the sacrifices and burn offerings before the Lord. It was constructed of acacia wood, but unlike the other furnishings of the tabernacle, it was overlaid with bronze instead of gold. Its associated utensils, forks, firepans, shovels, and basins were all of bronze as well. The altar was made of hollow so as to be light enough to be transported, and like the other furnishings, it was constructed with rings through which poles could be inserted for carrying. On all of its 4 corners were horns, box-like protrusions that served both an ornamental and ritual function. The blood of sin offering was smeared upon the horns. Wine libations were poured out over the horns. In the ancient Near East, altars represented a touching point between the realm of the divine and the realm of the mortal. That which went onto the altar went to God. Anything touching the altar was sanctified. There were 2 altars in the tabernacle. In addition to the bronze altar of the burnt offering, a smaller golden altar for offering incense stood inside the tabernacle. The golden altar will be introduced in the next Torah reading. You will never find an altar in a synagogue. The Torah forbids sacrifices outside the tabernacle or the temple in Jerusalem. Because of this, there have been no sacrifices since the destruction of the temple in the days of the apostles. Nevertheless, in the little sanctuaries of Jewish homes, the family table is likened to an altar in a tabernacle. The food on the table is likened to the sacrifices. Just as Israel and the priesthood were allowed to share from God's altar by partaking in the holy offerings, the family eats together around the Sabbath table in gladness of heart, enjoying the presence of God. The father of the family pronounces the appropriate thanksgiving over the wine and the food and invokes God's Sabbath blessings just as the priest serving at the altar in the tabernacle would have done as well. Symbolism of the tabernacle. You shall make the cord of the tabernacle. On the south side there shall be hanging for the cord of fine twisted linen 100 cubits long for one side. Exodus 27:9-10. In the comments for this Torah portion on the tabernacle and its furnishings, we have not delved deeply into the symbolic meaning and ritual functions of the tabernacle. Much of the symbolism and function of the tabernacle will be discussed as we progress through the Torah. Our goal for this Torah portion has simply been to familiarize you with the general layout and furnishings of the tabernacle. It is important to get a good handle on each of these elements. The tabernacle, and later the temple, will be the stage on which much of the Bible is set. From Exodus 25 until the end of the Bible, the sanctuary is the scripture's focal point. Moreover, the tabernacle and its services teach us about the Messiah and his work on behalf of his people. He is the tabernacle of God in human flesh. And that's about it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If this message blessed you, please like the video and subscribe. It does help a lot for the message to reach more people who need encouragement and truth. And feel free to follow our Instagram, linked in the comments for daily inspiration as well as daily prayers. May God bless you and keep you. May He shine His light on you and be gracious to you. May He turn towards you and grant you peace. Grace and shalom to you all.